Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Through the Fire and the SBN Small Business Network podcast. I am your host, Ryan Wickline, and today we're joined with a very, very special guest. He is an executive coach and author of the Alchemical Journey, David Gilbert. How you doing today, Dave?
I'm feeling grateful today, Ryan. Excited to be here.
Hey, I'm glad to have you, and I'm excited to learn some of the stuff that I've learned about you. So the number one question the audience is probably asking, who is David Gilbert?
Who is David Gilbert? I don't know. Are we supposed to go deep there? Because we can go really deep.
Go as deep as you need to.
I'll keep it practical for right now. We'll get deep later. My name is David Gilbert. I'm executive coach in the process of joining Novus Global that helps Fortune 500 companies, professional athletes, and just high-performing leaders go behind high performance. My own journey has been to understand kind of the path of what I now call soul-aligned performance, but this is also meta performance, which we use with the firm. And along that journey, I've discovered that alchemy is part of my story. And well, this will probably come up at some point, but my tattoo sleeve unknowingly tells the three phases of alchemy. It was not intentional, but it depicts them perfectly. So I've been taking clients through a process of transmuting their trauma, because if you want to perform at your best, and self-sabotage, you have something getting in the way, transforming that trauma into soul gold. And along the way, I developed what I called Alchemical Journey. And then I recently turned that into a book to share with others. So the art of transformation is what David's all about.
That's awesome. So what was your original dream?
My original dream, I told my mom when I was young, I want to open a business and live by the beach. So in 2020, I started living the dream because I'm living in San Diego, so we're by the beach. And I decided to go all in on my own business. And I signed the lease January 2020. And I had an idea for a retail store. It was all things mindfulness. It was meditation supply store. This was like, 5 years ago. So a little bit before meditation and mindfulness was just starting to get mainstream. And things like Joe Dispenza and visualization and manifestation. And I went for it. We were due to open March 2020. And we all know what happened that year. So that was quite the journey. But to just kind of go through a little bit, it's a beautiful question because it's what I thought I wanted, to be a big business owner and own a franchise and multiple locations, and I could see the vision. And I mean, from high school, I was selling t-shirts and doing the same thing. But it led me to the work I do today. And I learned that my zone of genius is one-to-one transformation. And I get to do that now. So it was by going for it and crashing and burning completely that I, rose from the metaphorical ashes to find that's really my work and unique gifts to share with the world.
Man, that is awesome. That not that you failed, but like in failure, you found yourself.
Yeah.
I said, what did that kind of teach you? That setback?
Yeah, man, that whole period was a wild time. I know we all have our own stories. I had a baby in the oven. Not me, not possible. My wife did, and we also had a 2-year-old at the time. So first-time parents, navigating that, going for being a self business owner, and hindsight, one part of I had this store, which was all things mindfulness. So if I wanted to be in integrity with what I was selling, I had to be able to come back to center. So that was a big part. And I didn't have the words then, but now I realize that the word was vision, right? I had a vision for where I could see this serving people and had a subscription box and how I could touch more people. But it led to me having to put the practices in place for myself if I was really going to sell this stuff. So it just taught me the process of what are those anchors that bring you back to center. Or for me, I also had purpose during the time of the pandemic, right? So for having that purpose. Like I was able to build up a little extra resilience in the tank because I was on purpose, because I created this like almost not quite chains, that's definitely not the right word, but like parameters, like bumper lanes, that I had to show up in this way if I was going to be that type of business owner. So um yeah.
Awesome. So what made you decide to write your book, The Alchemical Journey?
That was from after I went, and explored alchemy, and I got a bachelor's degree in advertising at Art Center College of Design. So I consider it design thinking. So my brain is just a creative problem solver. So as I went through my own process of my own inner work or healing journey, I started to learn about alchemy. And then my creative brain was like, what if we bring all the modalities of the alchemy, the alchemical process, along with, from peak performance to neuroscience to healing, inner child work, all the fun stuff, and bring that together along the transmutation process. What would that look like? And I started taking some people through it. I called it the Alchemical Journey. And it started off with like, what are the leads? What are the wounds from childhood? What are the self-sabotage or limiting beliefs that you're ready to transmute into soul gold? And this was a 2.5 day experience, a real life thing that started taking people through, and it created a profound shift in them. And they walked away empowered with a I would say soul aligned purpose, and kind of just understood these limiting beliefs can be your greatest gold if you're willing to jump in, or whatever the thing is. And this is to say, we all have these experiences, whether it's in childhood or later in life. Like, life is traumatic. So we're gonna like have to go through the fire. I love that, it's through the fire is the podcast, because this is the fire of transformation. And fire is the first phase of alchemy. And it's not so much it's like a fire of purity, right? Burning down these stories that we grow up with, that if you don't come to terms with like the unconscious parts of your story, they're probably something holding you back in some way. You're blindsided to something. So by coming to understand that, whatever, if something happened in childhood, like for myself, my parents got divorced around the age 3 or 4. It wasn't until my 20s in college I went to go do a hypnosis session. And I did that hypnosis session, and I was laying on the couch, and she started guiding me, and she said, go back to a memory. And I went back to around that age, and no fault of the own of my parents, but they were yelling and screaming at each other during that time. And I started screaming at them to get them to stop. And it didn't work. So I felt powerless. I felt shut down. And then I went off and ran to the side. And part of that hypnosis session was me kicking and screaming on the ground. And that just instilled this feeling sense of powerlessness and voicelessness. So really, the alchemical journey is jumping into those experiences of the past that maybe don't feel healed, or you haven't acknowledged them, and those will show up as a unconscious prison, potentially, if it holds you back from where you want to go. Right? If I want to be able to share my story, like I do now on podcasts, like if I didn't jump into the fire of my old past, like I wouldn't be able to do it. If you saw me try to do a podcast like over 5 years ago, I'd be sweating. I'd be forgetting what I was saying. I'd be like a robot. But
Wow.
yeah.
I love it. I mean, I love the fact that you say, hey, what are my hurts and bad habits? And I'm hopping in and jumping in the fire to go fix them. Like a lot of people are scared to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's natural. It's the first phase in the hero's journey, right? Refusal for the call. It's like anything, when you have this big, bold vision for your life or career, and you start going for it, you're going to hit challenges. So they can be the opportunity to jump into those. But the hero's journey, once again, refusal for the call. So this is where the hero knows, oh man, like there's probably something to jump in there, but no, it's scary. I have no idea. It's the complete unknown. I have no idea. And I could just say of somebody who's been on that path, for more than others, like it's not as scary as you make it out to be after you make the leap. And that's part of the hero finally gets kicked out in some regard, or something happens where the hero just has to embark on the journey, right? So it's something I do with clients. Like the second phase of transformation is dissolution, which is like releasing the emotions, repressed emotions that get attached to those past experiences or limiting beliefs. And then you realize one of the exercises is just like feel the emotion fully for 90 seconds. And it's funny because every time the clients do that, sometimes I'm like, it wasn't that bad, was it? And they're like, no, it wasn't. It wasn't horrible. It's not fun, but it wasn't horrible. So it's like if you could do a cold bath, if you could do something else that just pushes the limits of what you think you could do, you could absolutely sit in those difficult emotions, and then it just gets easier and easier over time.
Wow. I mean, to actually have to sit there and feel all your emotions from that past trauma. I mean, that sounds like some healing, like a nice healing process right there.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't want it to weigh you down, that's been my own story, right? I've always been into like, high performers, peak performance. Like, how do we live in that ultimate state of human potential? But that weight of the past is going to weigh you down if you let it. And it's like a boat with the anchor dropped, and it's like going all over the boat's trying to go places, but it's either going slow or going to the side. So when you can acknowledge those and, like you said, just feel it fully, it's a process of honoring that past that is your past. And I love to remind people, like, your story is the only story for the infinity of eternity. So like love, like acknowledge, honor all parts of your story, because that is unique. And that's like your soul gold is on the other side of whatever difficult challenge you had, if you're willing to go through it. And that's the greatest gold there is. That's the gold. If you're on your deathbed, we don't get to take the money with us. We don't get to take whatever other physical things, but it's the experiences, the lessons, and the growth that we get to take with us. So when you're on your deathbed, it's not going to be, oh my God, I got extra 100 million in the bank. You're going to look back at those periods where you really grew and had beautiful experiences. So you can acknowledge that now and jump in. It could also say the level of freedom by doing that too is profound in of itself.
So you mentioned here just a minute ago, soul gold. What exactly is soul gold?
Yeah, soul gold. It's been through my own experience. It just kind of popped up. I did a deep breathwork journey one day. It was my first time doing it. And I had this visual of, before that, I never done like breath work for 40 minutes to an hour. And I did that. And during the process, I wasn't really getting anywhere. And then all of a sudden, a helper, it was a big man, like put his hand on mine, and it sent me back to the night I lost my father. And if you've lost somebody dearly and suddenly, that why, and like, is this real? And during that breath work later, when I reflected on it, it was like a visual. I'm a visual person. It was like a visual of like a walnut getting cracked open, where I thought I dealt with that grief, but the reality was I absolutely did not. I just did what the typical, guy or society, says to be strong, like push it away, it's fine. And it cracked that open. And then I did exactly what you said before, like just sat there and let the feelings come up for a couple of months, not all the time, in little windows. And after that process, this question came up of, what did I learn from this? And that's where just the idea of soul gold came up, which is the lessons, which is the experiences, which is the growth that you'll cherish on your deathbed, and is the only thing you get to take with you. And this is where behind, after every traumatic experience or challenge, there is gold, and that gold is growth, or just the beautiful experiences. Like I know for myself, like Soul Gold today's my 7th anniversary with my wife, and Soul Gold is just going to be having an awesome, I mean, this morning was with my kids and my wife, and just having a beautiful morning, and then also just having a beautiful dinner with my wife. So it can be simple everyday things. It can also be those really profound moments where you made it through an impossible vision and you made it happen. or you just made it through a really difficult experience, and maybe you got to share, something with others along the way.
So I love that. So I love that phrase, soul gold. So most people, as you mentioned just a little bit ago, society tells us to push things down when we feel pain instead of dealing with it. How can we look? How can we change the way we look at inner work or our healing journey?
Yeah. Even then, like, I like to take the big picture view. Like, there's one perspective that you're already whole, right? Like, so from that perspective, if you're already whole, you're just getting to learn about new parts about yourself. So to make it a little bit less scary, like the first phase of alchemy is the black phase of transformation. It's the black phase. And that's like getting to know the unconscious parts of yourself. So if you could kind of reframe to healing, I still use the word sometimes, but like reframe healing to self-discovery. And it's almost like the perfect world. The way to show up would be like a little kid, like curious, like, whoa, I didn't know I did that because, this thing happened in childhood and I felt that way and that feeling never got processed fully. And like now I get to like honor that and be like, oh, okay, wow, that made me who I am today. And then it's a choice, like if I want to carry that forward. So it's by giving yourself some space and willing to look in the mirror at all parts of yourself and then remove any guilt or shame or judgment. Because guess what? We're all human.
Yeah.
So we all have our hard experiences. We all have our baggage. We all have the ways we could have shown up better. So if you can just open your heart to those parts of yourself and then just see it as a journey of self-discovery. That's why I called Alchemical Journey the ultimate adventure, because you're adventuring into your own story and the parts that make you you. And it's funny because we don't always think about, things like a traumatic experience at a young age. They'll actually give you superpowers, right? They help define who you are. And this can be a superpower of, I don't know, maybe you had like my wife, she had a really chaotic household, but she has a superpower of being able to use her voice and stop things in the moment and see where everybody's at. Right. So we all get some kind of gift. We just develop a behavior adaptation to whatever the circumstance was. But that's also your superpower if you could see it that way. So it's by just reframing it a little bit. Self-discovery. You're going to learn your superpowers. Maybe it's your purpose. If you don't feel on purpose, there might be something in there that helps you feel on purpose in life. Or just by overcoming or integrating those past parts of yourself, you're just going to feel a lot of fulfillment and like enjoyment for doing it.
That's kind of interesting. Just changing reframing the way we look at things, will help you process things a little bit better.
Yeah. Yeah. And a really simple like process, if you're kind of new to that, to like looking into your past and you're ready to excavate, just know like giving yourself space to discover what that thing is, and then space to feel whatever feelings come up, and then like what's the kernel of truth to take with you. And that's kind of like a simple process of alchemy right there,
Hmm.
right? And then like from there you get to carry that with you moving forward.
Yeah. So, how do you explore altered states like breath work or psychedelic safely?
All right, there we go, getting fun. So let's start with altered states are a powerful modality for healing, connection, and just inspiration. Now, it's also playing with fire. So, altered states, if you're not sure, you're like, David, I don't know what you're talking about. We're talking about altered states of consciousness where you're not in the ordinary state of consciousness, which is the beta brainwave we all kind of walk through life during normal waking life. So, this is some examples as deep meditation, extended breathwork journey, psychedelics, sometimes endurance activities will get you there, like prolonged over time. A really deep flow state where you kind of lose yourself in the moment. but it's just those moments where time operates on different rules. You're like, whoa, you're talking to somebody and you're like, it's 3 hours. I thought this was 2 minutes. Like, what happened? Right. Or you go play sports and you like, 1 minute feels like 1 hour. So you lose yourself in the moment and the moment feels really rich. Now, we can use this like a frame of being an alchemist. Like, I'm going to get into an altered state of consciousness to either help me on, let's say, my healing journey or self-discovery journey, or to like simply recharge my mind, body, or soul. And this is kind of getting a little bit off tour, but if you identify as a high performer, right, or a peak performer, well, kind of what the difference between a high performer and a peak performer is, the peak performer knows the formula for growth. So that's stress plus rest equals growth. And high performers, I'm speaking from my own experience, it's very easy to get on the treadmill of trying to do more, and then you eventually burn out. Right? Where the peak performer is, oh, if I want to perform sustainably at my peak over time, I have to acknowledge that I have to manage my energy really great. So by making time to do things that you love, creating a peak experience consciously, you recharge your metaphorical tank, and that allows you to have more energy on Monday morning. Now, when we get into the specifics of something like a breathwork journey or psychedelics, it's a little bit different, because breathwork, not as much. These are like the training wheels. I tell people, if you're curious, you're like, I've heard about psychedelics, this seems like something exciting or curious, like to implement, or some other altered state modality. Like, breathwork is a beautiful one to get started with, because breathwork, when you breathe for an extended period of time, there's holotropic. I'm certified with somatic breath work. You start to shut down your default mode network, which is like the conscious brain, and you get into the subconscious more. And you're just laying down or sitting, and you're breathing deeply, usually in through the mouth. And as the brain shuts down, you gain more access to your intuition or subconscious, and then your body, through breath work, can release stress that the nervous system has been holding on to. So that's why breath work's a really powerful tool. You can kind of re-regulate your body and like dislodge, if we're talking about old emotions, right? This is one of the things I take the clients through when the in-person alchemical journey, because you can just, like, whatever your body's been holding on to, because our body holds on to the stress. The science shows that it can get in our fascia, and past memories and those old emotions are in our fascia. So by doing breath work, we can release that. And at the minimum, you're probably going to feel recharged, but you can also have a basically psychedelic experience just with the power of your breath. So I always say start there if you're new to it. But the metaphor to really drive this home is I call it climbing peak states of consciousness. So what you're doing is you're using an altered state to climb a metaphorical mountain. And what happens when you climb the mountain? You start climbing and you get through the tree line. And the tree line's, like ordinary day, your ordinary mundane life, just the routine. And you get above that and you have a bigger perspective on everything. And then you keep climbing and get a little bit higher. And then you get above the cloud line. And then that's where you can see the sun and feel like the rays of the sun come down. And this can be inspiration, breath work, maybe, or psychedelics. Maybe you come back to a place where you come back to your heart, you connect deeper with yourself. Or if it's a shared experience, maybe you're connecting deeper with your partner, for example, right? And you're like, oh yeah, like this is what it means to be alive. Like, this makes me feel alive and want to choose life and like excited about life. And then you get to take that spark of light with you down the mountain, to show up on Monday morning more whole, more energized, more excited about life, to carry that energy into everything you do.
Wow. Like I work with some clients, and I preach a lot of the times, like deep breaths to like clear your mind and everything. So I know how much it helps.
Yeah. Yeah, there's so much you can do with your breath, and that's one of the tools. Even myself, like there's opportunity to explore and use more consistently, because with our breath we could change our state so quick. So no matter who you are, if you're about like growth and transformation, like being able to get yourself in a peak state through your breath is a powerful practice.
That's amazing. Like I heard you say probably on another podcast that like you could like get to the altered state like you were on psychedelics because your body naturally has those chemicals in there. Is that
Yeah, yeah. So like DMT is something that gets us in a dreamlike state, and we have this naturally in our body. So breath work, we can get into a similar state. I've had my own altered state experiences where it feels like psychedelics, and I've had other people who had, if you know like internal family systems, like they had a part that for them died a long time that came back alive. So people can have very profound experiences just with the power of our breath.
wow, crazy?
Yeah.
So what inspired you to get into executive coaching?
Yeah, it was during when I had the meditation supply store, I started coaching on the side. I got certified by the High Performance Institute and started taking some people through the process. And that's excuse me, that's where I realized that like the one-to-one transformation was really my space. And I've kind of gone through the journey as I went through my own journey of high performance to peak performance to now meta performance, getting to know what got in the way of myself showing up and performing at a better level, and then helping clients through that. And then from there, now I'm joining Novus Global, who's an executive coaching firm. So for me, it's really how do we grow the soul line with the goal line simultaneously? And this is why, part alchemical journey, part meta performance model, which is really just how do you explore what you're capable of, and it's meta as in metamorphosis. So really just transformational based performance.
Oh, so that's all meta performance. Is it just like more transforming yourself?
Yeah, it's really just what's the vision you have and who do you need to become in order to create that, and then living in integrity and commitment to that vision.
Huh. So yeah, I thought I heard you say before it's not like what we get, but it's who we have to become to in order to achieve our goal.
Yeah, yeah. Because what's this is where I like to preach: become the alchemist of your life. And the alchemist is always doing its best to understand reality with a capital R. So in reality, you have no control over external circumstances or how anybody else shows up, right? You can influence, but you have no direct control. What's the one thing you have direct control over? Yourself. So therefore, it's so easy, and I'm still sometimes get guilty of this myself. I get caught in the performance mindset of I'm gonna get focused on the outcome or the goal versus what's the one thing you can control. That's the process. So if you understand that, you're like, oh, like only the way I show up in the life is what I have ultimate control over. So if I could reframe that to who do I have to become in order to create that vision, then you realize it's identifying the mindset of that person you're going to become, and then living in commitment with that. And that's going to open up the process that if you just stay committed to that, it's going to show up. And this is also spiritually too, if you want to go into the depths of uncovering your true self, and it's coming back to who you are as a being beyond the mind. And that's the same thing. How can you be committed to being as well?
So you're pretty much just staying in a different way. Trust the process and focus more on the process, right?
Yes, if you can reframe your brain. It's hard because like cultural and everything like tells us the other way, right? If you could reframe your brain to be process oriented, to see that we're going to have 1,000 alchemical journeys in our life. Some macro, some huge ones, some micro, like in a day. So if you could just acknowledge it's all about the journey, and it's like a summitless peak, that there's always going to be more. If you accomplish some big goal in your life, then it's going to be like, now what? So since it's a summitless peak, therefore it's really about every step along the journey. And if you can get to a place of like joy, no matter what the circumstance is, like to me, that's ultimate power.
Yeah, I love how you reframe that. It's like it's a summitless peak because you're always going to be chasing something else and never be
Yeah.
fulfilled. Like you're never going to reach that ultimate goal because once you achieve the one, you're going to want to go chase another one. So just reframing that and like who you're becoming in the journey.
Yeah. And if you're listening to this through the fire, like you're about growth, right? If we distilled it down, you're here for growth, and you probably want to grow in all areas of life. So this is only my own perspective. I choose to believe we're this infinite, timeless, boundless soul from the sea of energy of creation, which is a fancy word for love. And we come into human form to have this crazy experience of being human, to have these physical challenges, and like come back to that place of limitlessness and love. So by like acknowledging it's actually the challenges are the sweet, like growth opportunities, or you could replace that with gold or the soul gold. So you can ask a lot of people who once they sell the business, right? You've probably heard one of these stories, maybe even on this podcast. Somebody who got the business they wanted, they sold it, they made the money, and then they're like, after that period, they're like, what made me, when I was the happiest? It was when I was starting that business and I just had all these challenges and I had to figure it out. And I was so in the zone because so much was going on. So it's by acknowledging, we love to think we just want it to be easy. But I know if you're listening to this podcast, like you're committed to growth as well. So it's how do you consciously choose that growth and consciously start to just love that journey and that process.
I love it. How do most high performing leaders get in their own way?
Yes, I love this one. It's part of the meta performance model is that all high performing leaders have blind spots. Everybody has blind spots.
Yeah.
So by going something, we use the terminology outside your intuitive fence. By going for a vision that is outside of what you think is possible for yourself, and then creating commitments to be in integrity to not only live your word, but to explore what you're capable of, you're going to eventually break those commitments to yourself. So this is where they can be growth opportunities. And this is where you're going to learn about yourself. You're going to learn maybe there is some, process of self-sabotage getting in the way, some way you're trying to show up and not able to do it. Or the flip side, if you're like, no, I do whatever I put my mind to, awesome. Well, there's probably some way you think you're showing up in life for others that other people would say that is not the case, right? So being able to gather the data and to give an example of this, like a classic one is like the husband who's like, I am providing for my family, I am feeding my household with my wife and kids, and I am a 10 out of 10 husband right now. And maybe if you were to sit down and ask for direct feedback from his wife and be like, if you were to rate me from a scale of 1 to 10, what would you rate me? And she'd be like, 4. And he'd be like, what? Why? And she'd be like, well, you haven't connected with me or the kids. All you do is work and mow the lawn, and the lawn's perfect and looks great, but we want your connection and presence. And it would be like, okay, like I thought I was showing up in this one way, but how I was being perceived and received by others maybe isn't the case. So every leader has this, and where a lot of leaders get stuck is they want to shy away from that direct feedback because we'll naturally attach it to guilt or shame, right? Or something negative about ourselves. But once again, if you could flip the switch and be like, oh, I get to learn more about myself. And this is where grace comes in, like grace for every part of the journey, really. This underlying thing of what we've been talking about, have more grace for yourself. But
Yeah.
if you can have grace for being human and then come back to self-discovery, and it's like, oh, wow, I wasn't aware I was showing up in that way. Like, thank you for that feedback. Like, this is my commitment to work on that moving forward. And then it's not something that you have to go in the cycle of judgment or like let that inner critic bring up, but more it's a gift. Like it can be a gift to get that direct feedback and course correct. And then if you continuously do it over the time, like you're going to become one powerful human.
I love that advice right there. Taking like ownership, but asking somebody else for your blind spots to critique you a little bit and don't take it as criticism, but to, you know, take it as like more advice and then move forward with it.
Exactly. It's one of the tools is like, what's the 1% for you to take with you to apply to your life? Right? Because not all feedback is going to be accurate 100%, but exactly that. It's like a gift that you can carry with you and really start to show up the way in the world that you want to.
How do we go beyond high performance?
All right. So this is something I wasn't even aware of over a year or so two ago. And it's been my journey from, like I said, I started with the High Performance Institute, and then I trained intensely with the Flow Research Collective, which is all about peak performance and flow state. And then recently learned about meta performance. So this is where you could see the performer. To kind of categorize this, the performer asks the question, what do I have to do to get the job done? Like they're just there to show up and like get the job done, and that's good enough. And then there's the high performer or peak performer, and they ask, how do I be the best? Now, like I said, I wasn't even aware there's something beyond that. Well, guess what? There is. The meta performer, and the meta performer asks, what are we capable of? And this is where, by opening ourselves up, like I shared before, to have that vision that's outside your intuitive fence, practicing living in integrity with it, choosing to relate to the vision gap with love instead of fear, or even tying it back to yourself of guilt and shame, then it's almost like a kid, like exploring potential, right? So it's like, wow, I didn't know if I had this one bold conversation or request with a specific person, like I could actually get that thing that I want. And I could have been, what could have taken me 1 year to get the promotion, I just got in 3 months. Like, whoa, okay, now what's possible if I live like that consistently, right? Or it's the same thing with like us going to the moon. The moon, Kennedy had a choice to solve world hunger, to develop a medicine basically a medicine to, I forget what disease, to solve that, or to go to the moon. And he decided to go to the moon. And that was completely impossible at the time. But what happened is when they went for something, they shot for the moon, and along the way going for it, they developed so much more technology and even uh, like medicinal tools and technology as well, and things that even helped with like solving aspects of global hunger by going for that impossible vision. So, there's all different pieces of like radio comms to food that they were able to do like up in space, and like all these different things that have been a byproduct of going for that impossible vision. So, but being the meta performer is being able to realize that you can become who you need to become to create the vision at hand. And the more that you remove the resistance of guilt, shame, or fear, and jump into those and use those as like the blind spots that are getting in the way, and then learning how to like go through the opposite, like, and then on top of that, doing that with others, this is how we can go really far, further than what we think we can.
Hmm. So you talk about creation over manifestation. Can you explain that?
Yeah. All right. This is getting into the weeds. I love it. I don't always get asked about this. So it's been my own journey to really jump into, manifestation, mindset, consciousness, whatever you want to call it. And it's funny because I stumbled upon that my tattoo sleeve tells the story of alchemy. And I even thought I was original. Like when I had the store, I sold my first course. It was a thing on manifestation. and I came up with like the head, heart, and hands, right? So you have a vision in your head, you feel the emotions as if it's already done, and you go create it with your hands. A simple manifestation process. Well, I was listening to an audiobook on alchemy, and like they're like the alchemists knew that you create with your head, heart, and hands. So just been through my own process of jumping into the weeds of this. Manifestation can get attached to the law of attraction, right? Which is in exploring like the Hermetic philosophy, if we're all of the one mind of God or source. Another scientific way to say this is we're all energetic beings, atoms vibrating, and we're all in the quantum field, that we have the ability to change our frequency, who we're being as an energetic being. And by that, the law of manifestation is that we're going to start to attract these circumstances to us. And I have my own experience of this. I did this back in early 2019, the beginning of that. I drew this journal of the perfect layout of my dream home. I actually did that and closed it, and it got tucked away, and I completely forgot that I did that. And then at the end of the year, there's a whole nother story. It's on my podcast of how got the home that I'm in today. And I later discovered that journal, and that's where I realized it was exact layout of the house I'm living in today, minus the second story office. But I don't know. Maybe that's a sign. 5-10 years down the road, we'll build that. So there's absolutely something to the manifestation process, and that like really hooked me. Now it's this is getting into the weeds, but there's ways of looking at it of a masculine way of being versus a feminine way of being. And this is from a kind of like energetic standpoint. So a masculine way of being is like, I have a vision, I have a purpose, I'm going to go focus on what I need to do to go create that. The feminine way of being is focused on being itself. So like, I'm going to be in the moment, and I'm going to flow with the times, and I'm going to use my intuition to just go through life, and I don't really have this big vision. So I consider manifestation more of this way of like, you change your state and hopefully things attract to you. Now, it's a big topic, so I'm sure a lot of people know if you've been playing around with it. Sometimes it might feel like it works, and sometimes it doesn't. So, what's more powerful than just kind of sitting, hoping that this thing is going to happen? And that is stepping into the process of creation, which is similar, but it's the same as the meta performer, right? It starts with a vision. And to get to a point that I am committed to this vision, and I'm committed to becoming whoever I need to become in order to create this vision. So it starts with the head, and then it's like the same process, just to simplify it, coming back to the heart of like, I know this is done. I'm living dictated by my future, not any past or current evidence. And then from there, it's like Tony Robbins, like, take massive action. Like if you were committed to creating this vision, as if maybe you've heard the fable here, the kid who walks out with his mentor into the ocean, and then he dunks his head underneath the water, and then he says, until you're willing to fight for your life like this for what you want to create, you're not going to be able to have it. So it's like that ferocity towards your creation. And then along the way, where a lot of us get setbacks, is we'll look at, let's say a manifestation of, oh, I want to go build this bridge and connect two continents. I don't know, some grand vision. And what will happen? Like, we'll do this. We'll create this big vision. We'll do that. We'll get the blueprint. We'll be ready. And then we show up, and there's a couple of trees and rocks in the way, or massive boulders, right? And sometimes in my own experience, when you're manifesting, it's like, oh, okay, it wasn't for me. Like, it didn't just show up. Like, the path didn't just show up and like carve itself out. Whereas creation's like, no, like, we get the sledgehammer and we go drill down the boulder. And then after the boulder, a couple of trees fell over. We go cut up the trees, and you're just so committed that the challenges are coming, that you just plow through those, and you stay persistent and you stay patient because the only thing, you are so committed to this vision, the only thing getting in the way is time. And that's, there's so much more we can go into in creation, but that's really kind of the big picture view difference between manifestation and creation.
I like the way you explain that better than like manifestation. Like creation, where you're taking action, sounds way better because you're even. Most people know that you're not just gonna get something without putting action behind it.
Yeah. Yeah, and the universe like rewards like just complete dedication in your mind. Like that is conviction, right? That is belief. And we all know the great authors of the past who talk about that. So if you can back that up with this will, that whatever challenges like are the opportunities getting me closer to the vision, like you're just going to plow through. And as part of our innate gifts, we're creative, intelligent, infinite intelligence, and we can use that towards what we want to create in life.
Yeah. You host the Golden Life podcast. What inspired you to start podcasting?
Well, that started with my lead, right? My emotional wounds from childhood of feeling voiceless. So it was by like literally just getting on opportunities like this and sharing my story and my view on life, like brings me fulfillment because I overcame what used to be really, really hard for me to do. So the podcast was just a testament. I also know I have a little bit different frame of life than others, and I'm just passionate about helping people see the infinite gold and that's like lying all around if we're willing to, first of all, have the awareness to see it, and then second of all, some things are going to be led in life, and it could be in that internal lead, right, that past experience, or it could be external, like that vision that's so big for yourself that feels heavy. And then how do you apply the process of transmutation, which ancient alchemists have been studying for thousands of years, which is really the art of transformation. And we can consciously do this and create a more beautiful world for ourselves and hopefully others and the world as a whole. And I think if we could all just do that, especially with all the technology we have nowadays, like we can create a much more beautiful world.
Yeah. How important has personal development and upgrading your mindset been on your journey?
Well, I'm in the Hermetic philosophy that everything is of the one mind of God. You call that consciousness. So therefore, mindset is everything. Now, to get into, since we talked about kind of manifestation or, law of attraction or creation, like understand it, the intention starts with the head, right? So it starts with the mindset. And if we send a really powerful intention or vision or commitment declaration into the universe, then the universe is going to grant us opportunities to make that a reality. But this is where I'll just simplify it for today's talk of like the heart and the hands, right? So coming back, if you can be in a state of gratitude for whatever the universe sends you after that is like an opportunity to grow and expand and overcome challenge. Like from my view, like, right, we're an infinite, timeless, boundless soul coming into physical form. So like the challenge is like the fun stuff to explore. But if you can do that and have gratitude as if it's already done and you just get to play out almost like a movie or video game in real time, and then take massive actions with your hands and like go create the thing physically and make it happen, like that is the sweet spot. But there's a gap between the intention setting in your mind and making it a reality. So the other gold for people to know, if you're here, you're into personal development, becoming a better version of yourself. And as you do that, there's something, I've started to track that not a lot of people are talking about. And that is maybe you go through a profound transformation, or maybe you start working with a guide or coach and you're fired up and you have the vision, you know who you want to become, and you're committed and you do it and you go and you're a couple weeks in or maybe a month. And then what happens? You start to fall a little bit back into your old ways. You're like, what the heck is going on? Like, I got the mindset, I'm committed and I'm doing it. Well, in transformation, this is like distillation, the fifth phase of transformation, there's an oscillation period. And this is also like pure science, like energy oscillates. So just know, if you're committed to your own development and you're going to make a big leap towards your vision or business or some growth in some area of life, like as you start that journey and you cultivate the mindset and you put it into practice, there will come a moment where you're going to get some challenges. And guess what? You're human. So you might fall back into your old ways. But if you do, that's just you oscillating between the old version of yourself and in the new version of yourself. And as long as you stay committed with that mindset, you're going to find a way to get through the portal or tunnel and come out the other side.
Exactly. Like most people think like growth is just like some upward arrow, and it's like, no, it's like a lot of ups and downs in that process.
Yep, absolutely. It's like a jagged peak, and then sometimes it's a rolling hill, and then another jagged peak, and it's all over the place.
Yeah. What is one book you'd recommend for personal development or mindset?
Ooh, As a Man Thinketh is a classic one. I'll also use this opportunity to pitch my own book. Right.
Go ahead.
So the Alchemical Journey, the ultimate quest for inner gold. What I did was put the 7 phases of alchemy combined with the hero's journey, and it's a map. Now it's told as a fictional a tale where the hero meets the alchemist and they go on this journey. But if you could kind of read between the lines, you'll notice it talks about overcoming limiting beliefs and then jumping into the depths of your own being, which is when I would do a breath work journey with people, and it's releasing those emotions, right? And then getting the kernel of truth of who you really are in your core, and opening up your heart, and then bringing all those past parts of yourself and inner judge and critic into your heart, and then realigning with your higher self, and then grounding with Mother Earth, and then balancing the masculine way of being and feminine, which is another say of like doing versus being, or like, productivity versus rest and recovery. So finding that balance within yourself, and then ultimately coming back to a place where you declare who you are as a being. And if you go through that process, this is how you become the authentic version of yourself, and start to crystallize the gold within you.
Nice. Yeah, I'm definitely going to go check out your book and give it a read.
Yeah. It's a short read. You could read it in an afternoon. And if you like the book, The Alchemist, it's almost like an extension of the book, The Alchemist.
Nice. What is the story behind your tattoo sleeve then?
All right. So yeah, this was a fun moment. This was after the period where I just wasn't making the numbers with the store. I couldn't gain momentum during the pandemic. Open, closed, open, closed. And I was coaching, and I bought The Idiot's Guide to Alchemy. Now I'll just pause there and talk about the tattoos I have. So this tattoo, there's a knight for this listeners, and a dragon on the back. And this was originally going to be the classic Saint Michael depiction of Saint Michael killing the demon underneath him. And I got this in my early 20s. And this was a declaration because hindsight, I know now I was going through the dark night of the soul for myself. So I was going to art center. I was living by myself. I was facing a lot of depression and abusing a little bit of substances leading up to that. Not so much during that time. But it felt like I had a monster in my head, like this inner critic that would come in with like crazy thoughts and like steal my presence and attention. And this was my declaration, like, I'm gonna overcome that force. And I even nicknamed him Freddy Cougar. And I drew my own version, and it was a knight, getting ready to give the final blow to Freddy Cougar underneath. But I've my path has been learning that internal resistance about that force. And it's funny because when you fight negative thoughts, what happens? You start a fight. And then the thoughts get more powerful.
Yep.
So it's been after the fact I realized, or actually, I went to the tattoo artist in Pasadena. I was like, this is what I want to get. I drew my own version with the knight and Freddy Cougar underneath. And I showed it to him. I was like all hyped up because I finally got the courage to go in there and declare to the universe, I'm going to defeat this, right? I go in there. He looks at it. He looks at my arm. He looks at it again. He's like, you know what? it's not going to look that good. Like the way that his arm up with the sword, the sword's going to be curved. Actually, I won't even put my name behind it. Like, I won't do this for you. So I was like, oh, like left there defeated. But I went back home and I meditated. And the vision that I have today is a knight standing confidently, holding onto the top of the sword, and the sword's in the ground and the shield's to the side. And I didn't understand it, and I went with it. Instead of Freddy Cougar or demon-like entity underneath, it's this dragon, black dragon, that's 10 to 100 times bigger than the knight. And I was like, okay, that's like what the vision, the intuition said it was. So I got that tattooed. And then every man in my family has had their pilot's license. The Gilberts were crop dusters. So I got my pilot's license and I got that tattooed after. And then I have this, now it turned into a full Dia de los Muertos tattoo, but originally it was just a girl turning in from a skull, or from a girl into a skull. And when I went to the tattoo artist, this is what it turned into, using pictures as inspiration. But then you didn't see this ruby right here. So there's red roses for the listeners, and then there's a white rose underneath, around where the pilot's license is, on the opposite side of that. So back to when I bought the book. The Idiot's Guide to Alchemy. I knew like pretty much nothing about alchemy. And I bought this book on Amazon, and it showed up, and I used to have a couch in my office. I was sitting on the couch reading it, and it starts talking about the 3 phases of alchemy. And the first phase is the black phase. And I've talked about it, today. And the black phase is represented by a black dragon. And this is the insurmountable force of chaos, which can also be our unconscious, that we can't defeat. There's no overcoming it, right? It's just part of the universe. It's also, you can consider it the force of nature. And you can't defeat the black dragon. You can only stand confidently to it. And then the second phase is the white phase. And it's represented by a white rose, which I have right there. And the white phase is like the awakening or enlightenment. This is when you get in touch with your highest essence of who you are. So the third phase is the red phase, and that's represented by a red rose. And this is the part of the journey where the inner king and inner queen, another way of saying inner masculine, inner feminine, like they die, they come back, they come together in sacred union, but before that they die, and then they're reborn, and that gives birth to the Philosopher's Stone. So I had my tattoo sleeve. This wasn't here when we got it done. For the listeners, there's a red ruby or Philosopher's Stone to give it away. When I went to the tattoo artist in Long Beach to do the Dia de los Muertos tattoo, we just got somebody in the shop. He's like, hey, can you help us? Can you put your hand in your hair like this? For the listeners, just kind of touching the hair, so that we have a model to go off of. And it was empty. And I was reading that. I looked at my tattoo sleeve. I realized I had every single symbol of the 3 phases of alchemy. And then there was this little piece missing that would fit the Philosopher's Stone perfectly. And that's when I knew, like, alchemy is part of my story here to share with others. And that's when led to the Alchemical Journey and everything else.
Wow. Crazy how you get led to something, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. For the listeners, like, this has been, we all have these, I call them golden threads in life. If you could just notice them and start to pull on them. Because just to share like a couple highlights from my own story, like it goes deeper of, I'm a 5th and 6th generation Californian. So like my great grandpa came out during the gold rush, right? And then in high school, I was selling California lifestyle t-shirts, but then I had this hit of like golden lifestyle. And I always knew golden lifestyle was part of something. And then I finally made my first course when I had the store, the Golden Life Academy. And then from there, when I bought the Idiot's Guide to Alchemy, I was like, oh, Golden Life, alchemy, become the alchemist. Like, this is what this thread has been leading me towards. And then it makes sense too, because my soul goal, right, is to help people be empowered, because I like to explore the most powerful tools of transformation. So by empowering others, I get fulfillment, because that was my challenge as a kid, that now as I'm bigger and I have all the tools and capability, I get to use and transmute. So we all have those opportunities and threads. And sometimes it's going to be the nasty stuff, right? Sometimes it's going to be the fire that you just have to walk through. But guess what? You can make it to the other side.
Great message. How can people get a hold of you?
Yeah, I got a couple websites. I got my personal website, davidggilbert.com. I also have the Golden Life website. If you love this idea, become the alchemist and want to explore the alchemical journey. Then I also have the Golden Life podcast, Become the Alchemist, that you could find on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple as well, where I just share my own story and little nuggets about how you can become the alchemist of your life.
Awesome. Is there anything we haven't covered that you want to talk about?
I would just say, I just like to share this message. And we live in such a beautiful time. Now, it might feel crazier than ever. And I just like to remind people, like, as a collective, like, we did it. And you're like, David, what are you talking about? Like, we can think an idea, type it into a keyboard, and a robot can go create it in real life. So, like, as mankind, like, we have mastered external reality. So, like, it's just a message of now it's just about us looking in the mirror and looking at our mindset, right? Like, we have the capability to create a much more beautiful world and coherent world. So just don't believe everything you hear on the news, because there is so much beauty in today's world, and we have so much potential and leverage with technology that we can create. I mean, we're in the process of a radical transformation. So apply this to yourself and remind people, we're more alike than sometimes the media likes to say we are. So the more that we can get in touch with our own heart and open ourselves up to our own journey and love ourselves for that, the more we could love others. And as we do that, we're going to unify. And this is how we could create a much more exciting world where we don't all have to suffer on a collective scale as much as we are now. And to me, this is the really exciting work of today's time.
Great message. Final question. What is one piece of advice you would give our audience about overcoming adversity?
All right. I said it a bunch of times. I would say, remind yourself there's gold on the other side. Like, no matter what, just no matter what, there's gold on the other side. But if you choose not to go through it, no judgment, no guilt or shame for yourself, right? Just know, like, every adversity, there's gold if you're willing to just jump into it.
Great advice right there. David, I can't thank you enough for coming on here and sharing your powerful story with us. You gave us some great knowledge.
Thank you, Ryan. I love the energy that you bring to this discussion. I love the topic of this podcast. And yeah, like thank you for the opportunity to share my story, because this is what brings me fulfillment. So I hope it was resourceful to all the listeners.
I'm almost positive it was. Well, guys, that's all the time we have here today. I'll talk to you the next time. Remember, the only way to get what you want is go through the fire.